The day Miranda kept the company breathing, Sierra was filming a TikTok about indoor swing sets for creative workplaces. While servers hiccuped and invoices stacked like Jenga towers, Miranda sat hunched in her corner cubicle, left wrist in a brace, right eye twitching from lack of sleep, resurrecting payroll for 312 employees, fixing a busted data sync that almost sent client reports to the wrong regulator, and talking an intern out of pushing live code that would have deleted their entire backup archive. All before noon. No applause, no thank you. Just a Slack ping from Sierra saying, "Let's be more agile, babe." The fourth emergency came at 2:17 p.m., a vendor outage threatening compliance dashboards across 5 departments. Miranda didn't sigh. She just put down her cold lunch, cottage cheese, and a string cheese, her idea of warm weather keto, and got to work rerouting packet loads through the old server tunnel she'd built back in 2016, when the company was still a duct-taped startup running on coffee and prayer. Upstairs, Sierra was live on Zoom with the entire org. "We're about to enter a new era of intention," she cooed from her eucalyptus-scented office, hair curled, face glazed with something called executive shimmer bomb. She used words like ecosystem synergy and vibe velocity, while Miranda, muted and uninvited, wrestled silently with a half-dead SQL query that held $3 million in escrow reporting hostage. Nobody thanked her. Again, hey, quick break in Miranda's misery for just a second. If you're listening to this, chances are you're part of the 90% who enjoy these stories but haven't hit that subscribe button. Maybe do that now, toss a like too. It means a lot to the team churning this madness out every day. It's the digital equivalent of a nod and a fresh cup of coffee. All right, back to your regularly scheduled backstabbing. By 5:46 p.m., the crisis log looked like a war zone. Miranda had solved 4 fires, saved a client account, updated a data integrity patch, and eaten exactly 2 almonds. Sierra's day, on the other hand, included a spiritual huddle, a selfie with the office dog, and 73 minutes re-editing her LinkedIn bio to include the phrase impact cultivator. No one said anything, of course. Sierra was the CEO's daughter-in-law. She was technically in charge of people operations, but seemed far more interested in ordering neon bean bags and renaming departments after astrology signs. The legal team was now Libra Ops. Sales became Mars Energy. HR was the Coven. When one poor guy in finance laughed, Sierra made him do vision journaling as penance. Miranda said nothing. She never did. She'd been there 12 years, longer than any VP, longer than the furniture. She had watched 3 CEOs come and go, held this company's brittle bones together through acquisitions, lawsuits, server migrations, and a 2-month stretch when payroll was being processed from a Chromebook on hotel Wi-Fi. She didn't talk. She built, and that made her dangerous. Sierra hated her on sight, not because Miranda ever raised her voice, or contradicted her, or wore anything other than gray sweaters and orthopedic sneakers, but because Miranda knew things. Knew where the logins were buried. Knew how the data lake actually functioned behind the glossy dashboard Sierra liked to showcase in town halls. Knew which subdirectory could bring it all crashing down. And worst of all, Miranda didn't need Sierra's approval. That first week Sierra was installed as Chief Culture Officer, she'd ask Miranda if she wanted to reimagine her purpose in this ecosystem. Miranda looked her dead in the eyes and said no, just that, no explanation, no sugar, just truth, flat and final. From that moment on, Miranda was marked. Small things changed. Her invites to leadership syncs quietly disappeared. Her team budget shrank. Her software requests stalled in procurement hell. Sierra started holding casual brainstorms about sunsetting legacy systems, meaning Miranda. Once, Sierra walked past Miranda's cubicle and dropped a crystal on her desk. "This is for abundance," she said, like she was handing out dog treats. Miranda dropped it in a drawer next to a pack of Advil and an expired access badge from 2012. But Miranda wasn't stupid. She'd seen people like Sierra before, shiny, entitled, clinging to buzzwords like life rafts. She knew the type. She just didn't expect the storm to come so fast. On that particular Thursday, as the lights dimmed and Sierra pranced out in platform sandals shouting "Great hustle today, team," Miranda lingered at her desk. She looked around the room, the bean bags, the branded kombucha fridge, the marketing guy who still didn't know how to unmute himself on Zoom. She closed her laptop. And for the first time in months, she smiled. The email subject line said, "Sparkles Culture Calibration Week Kickoff Sparkles," and came with 4 embedded GIFs, 3 color-coded intentionality maps, and a mandatory quiz titled "Which Workplace Vibe Archetype Are You?" Miranda didn't click it. She didn't need to. She knew exactly what was coming. By noon, Sierra had convened her latest pulse check powwow in the company's overpriced all-hands room, which had recently been renamed The Nest. The projector played lo-fi music while HR passed around stress balls shaped like avocados. Everyone was given Sharpies and sticky notes and asked to write what's holding back your authentic work self. Someone in finance wrote rent. Miranda wrote nothing. Sierra stood at the front in faux leather leggings and a crop blazer, holding a microphone like she was hosting The Bachelor. Disciplinary Edition. She clicked through slides about psychological spaciousness and radical belonging. But nestled between the fluff and the fluffier fluff was a single, venom-tipped phrase, identifying legacy drag in ops and infraverticals. That was Miranda's division. They all knew it. Sierra paced like she was auditioning for a TED talk no one asked for. When systems get old, she purred, they stifle innovation. Sometimes that system is a process. And sometimes, her eyes skimmed the audience like a lazy sniper, it's a person. Miranda didn't flinch. She just looked at the wall clock and counted the seconds until her 3:15 sync with procurement. But inside, something was shifting. A small, familiar click. The sound a trapdoor makes right before it opens. After the meeting, Miranda returned to her desk and opened a plain text document titled Notes.txt. She began typing. Not emotionally, not frantically, just typing, dates, names, meeting logs, Slack threads. Unapproved software Sierra's team had installed for employee mood tracking that scraped email headers. Password changes Sierra had ordered IT to execute without MFA. The Google Drive folder where HR had quietly started uploading org charts with her name removed. The smell of rot was rising, and Miranda, like any good technician, knew to record the evidence before the rats could chew through it. That afternoon, Sierra stopped by her desk holding a neon pink smoothie that looked like Pepto-Bismol had a baby with drywall dust. "Hey," she sang, fake as a coupon for a free hug. "Just wanted to check in on your alignment. Some folks feel you've been a little resistant to the culture shift." Miranda turned, her face a mask. "I've been focused on stability." "Oh, totally, babe, but don't forget, vibes drive viability." Sierra winked and walked off, leaving a sticky note on Miranda's monitor. Less friction, more flow. Dizzy by Thursday, Miranda's budget had been quietly slashed. Her request for replacing a failing hard drive was kicked back with the note, "Let's pause on legacy upgrades until the new infra roadmap is finalized." New infra roadmap? There was no roadmap, just vibes and beanbags. At Friday's ops meeting, Miranda brought it up. Calm, straightforward. "There's a structural vulnerability in how licensing is tied to external cloud nodes," she said. "If we're ever audited or breached, it'll raise red flags." Silence. The new CTO, a guy who listed Web3 enthusiast in his email signature, blinked like a confused cat. "I think that's a worst-case lens, Miranda. Let's focus on possibility, not paranoia." Sierra nodded along, smiling like she'd just been named prom queen. "Yeah, I think what we don't need is fear. We're building trust, not tearing it down, right?" Miranda didn't argue, she'd learned. Don't warn the iceberg when the ship wants to party. That night, she ordered takeout and kept typing. She downloaded backups, snapshotted logs, refreshed her encrypted folder labeled Holding LLC Contingency. Checked the timestamps on her contract PDF, especially the clause buried in subsection 9.4. In the event of involuntary separation without cause, all non-transferable rights to proprietary licensing shall revert to signatories holding entity. Sierra had signed it during the merger, back when she was just the founder's Instagram girlfriend with a clipboard and a vision board. Back when Miranda had been asked to quietly rebuild the entire data backbone post-acquisition. Back when she'd smiled and said, "Of course I'll help, but I'll need some assurances." And now, thanks to Sierra's own signature, Miranda had the nuclear button. She didn't plan to press it, not yet. But if Sierra kept pushing, she'd find out what legacy really meant. The sky outside was that kind of cheap blue that made everything inside feel faker than usual, like even the daylight knew it was about to witness something staged. The office was unusually full for a Friday. Marketing was loitering near the kombucha taps. Finance had their headphones off. Even legal was standing suspiciously still, phones half raised like they'd been tipped off. Miranda noticed. Of course she noticed, she always noticed. But she kept typing her last JIRA ticket for the day, titled Final Recursive Cron Job Audit, and let her fingers move slow, deliberate. Like she had time. Like she didn't already know. At 4:02 p.m., Sierra strutted out of the nest in heels too high for someone with that little balance, and clapped her hands like a kindergarten teacher who just found the glitter glue. "Team, can I have everyone's attention for just a sec?" She chirped, voice sweetened with corporate venom. "This is a really big moment for our culture evolution." HR flanked her, eyes glassy and unreadable, holding a manila folder and the kind of forced smile you wear when you've already signed the severance paperwork and your kid needs braces. Sierra pulled something from behind her back. A small potted succulent, soil freshly misted, the pot emblazoned with the company's motto in lowercase sans serif, "Grow where you're planted." Miranda didn't move. Sierra beamed, "We're saying goodbye to someone who's been with us for, gosh, what? 12 years, 13. She giggled like she wasn't sure Miranda had been real this whole time. "But we're growing, we're evolving, and some legacy systems just don't scale with the vision." She walked the succulent over like it was a participation trophy. "Miranda, we're so grateful for your contributions, and we're excited to explore new energy in this space." That's when the folder came out. Termination, effective immediately. No cause, no severance. Just 2 weeks of Cobra info and a bulleted list of what she was expected to surrender before EOD. Badge. Laptop. Any dignity she'd managed to squirrel away. A few fake coughs, awkward shifting. One guy in UX had the audacity to say, "Wait, what?" before Sierra shot him a look that could curdle oat milk. Miranda stood. No tears, no yelling, just the slow motion of someone unhooking her lanyard like she was removing a bandage that had been stuck on too long. She took the succulent, balanced it in one hand. With the other, she picked up a manila envelope she'd prepared earlier that week, slid it across her desk toward her replacement, some overeager Stanford grad who still thought data hygiene was a cool phrase. "These are your handoffs," she said. "Documentation's complete. Good luck." Sierra tried to hug her. Miranda stepped back. Silence fell like drywall dust, and then she turned. No exit speech. No dramatic flourish. She walked past the vending machine, the mood board wall, the espresso bar no one knew how to use. Her orthopedic sneakers squeaked once on the polished floor, and then she was gone. Downstairs, she stepped into the parking garage and exhaled. Not like someone defeated, but like someone releasing something she'd been holding far too long. She set the succulent in her passenger seat, gently, like it might explode if handled wrong. It stared up at her, spiky, smug, thriving in controlled neglect. "I should water you with printer ink," she muttered, dry. Her phone buzzed. One text from her attorney. Trigger pulled? She replied with a single word, yes. By the time Sierra finished her happy hour Instagram reel, caption "Leadership means making space seedling #culture first #growth vibes," Miranda was at home, barefoot, hair tied back, a decade's worth of receipts and contracts open on her dining room table. She opened her laptop, connected to the node, and checked the logs. The switch had been flipped, the code had reverted. The license chain by law now pointed straight to her LLC. The trap Sierra triggered had no alarm, no warning, just the quiet sound of everything slowly disconnecting. Miranda poured herself a glass of Pinot, stared at the succulent on her counter, and waited. 2 years before Sierra's lipstick ever kissed a job title, Miranda was sitting in a fluorescent-lit conference room across from three suits who smelled like iced cologne and expedited betrayal. The merger had just been finalized. Some Silicon Valley company with a sleek logo and zero infrastructure had bought out Miranda's sleepy, underfunded workplace. The new execs smiled too wide, said words like disruption and scalability, as if they weren't about to gut the company like a trout. "Just a formality," they'd said, sliding the new contracts across the table. Standard language. Nothing to worry about. Miranda didn't smile. She never did, really. Instead, she took the thick packet, walked out, and drove straight to a strip mall office where a 68-year-old woman named Carla Lee practiced law out of a room that smelled like menthols and microwave soup. Carla had been Miranda's divorce attorney 12 years ago and had once successfully negotiated a postnup that kept Miranda's retirement untouched while her ex-husband cried about losing his boat. "Let's take a look at the fine print," Carla had muttered, chewing on a toothpick like it owed her rent. By the third clause, she stopped. "Here," she said, tapping the page with a hot pink highlighter. "They want you to rebuild their entire architecture, on your time, your labor, your tools, but they're claiming full ownership of the licensing. Not just the deliverables. Everything. You give them this, you'll never own another line of code you write for them again." Miranda nodded once. "So we push back? We don't push, honey, we leverage." For 3 weeks, they negotiated, quietly, strategically. Carla played dumb when it served them, asked for obscure legal insertions that made the execs feel smart for agreeing. And buried in subsection 9.4. Line 11, after the indemnity clauses and IP transfer junk, they inserted it. In the event of involuntary separation without cause, all non-transferable licensing rights associated with proprietary software developed by the signatory shall revert to signatory's registered holding entity. No one blinked. The clause sounded like insurance jargon. Legal tofu, and anyway, company was too excited to finally have a real infrastructure architect who wasn't a contractor with a Bitcoin side hustle. They signed. Carla chuckled when the final copies came back. "That clause won't matter until it does, and when it does, you'll own their nervous system." Miranda didn't laugh, she just nodded again, folded the contract, filed it in a fireproof box. And then she built. She rebuilt their systems from the ground up: authentication layers, compliance tracking, payroll sync, audit chains, uptime management, custom dashboards, all of it. Every kernel, every function call, every shadowy corner of their operations, it ran through her architecture. And her architecture ran through her tools, built under her license. With software libraries compiled from her sandbox environment tied to her LLC's certificate chain. She never told anyone. She didn't need to. She just kept solving problems. Quietly. Permanently. Now, sitting at her dining room table in sweatpants, contract unfolded beside a half-drained wine glass, she reread subsection 9.4 for the first time in 2 years. The paper was still crisp. The signature, Sierra's, was still clean, probably signed with a glitter pen while wearing a girl boss hoodie. Miranda stared at it for a long moment. Let the silence settle. Then she picked up her phone. Carla answered on the second ring, voice as raspy as ever. "Tell me it's finally happening." Miranda exhaled. "It's time. I'll get the filing prepped. You want escalation language? Yes, you want them to blink. I want them to see the void they built their empire on." Carla whistled. Damn, remind me never to cross you. Miranda smiled, not wide, not cruel. Just the kind of smile you wear when you know the storm you buried is finally crawling up from the basement. She hung up, stared out the window. Somewhere out there, Sierra was probably sipping Prosecco. Uploading a selfie caption closed a chapter. Opened a portal. Cherry Blossom # new energy let her enjoy it. Monday was coming, and Miranda had already pulled the fuse. At 6:17 a.m., the first ooh hit the # for Slack channel. Someone from Payroll couldn't log into the reporting tool. At 6:23, IT pinged the CTO about missing endpoint access. By 6:31, the third-party vendor who handled benefit disbursement called to say their API key was failing. By 6:45, nothing was working. Not just a little outage. Full flatline. The data center was offline. Client portals bricked. Compliance dashboards frozen mid-sync. Terminal windows flashed red with license verification errors no one could decipher. Backup credentials failed. Escalation calls started before sunrise. At 7:04 a.m., the CTO's Slack went from available to frenzied meatball, as one engineer called it later. At 7:11, a marketing director tried to log in to push a newsletter, and instead triggered a system-wide lockout protocol Miranda had quietly built 2 years ago, in case of emergency or dumbesses. Meanwhile, in a quiet suburb 15 miles away, Miranda stirred cinnamon into her coffee. The ceramic mug read, "I void warranties." The succulent from her desk sat in the windowsill, thriving in filtered light, smug as ever. She opened her laptop, not the old work-issued one, now presumably deactivated, but her personal one. The dashboard for her LLC license server was clean, humming along nicely. Every access ping from her former employer lit up the logs like a Christmas tree. They were trying, and failing. One of the engineering leads tried to restart a dependency chain, returned an authentication error. License expired. Please contact the administrator of LLC 18753 MD. They didn't recognize the string. They should have. Back at the office, Sierra arrived at 7:30 in her usual Monday getup, designer athleisure, and an aura of undeserved confidence. She walked into the war zone with an iced green juice and said, "Okay, let's center ourselves and attack this with grace." 2 minutes later, she was screaming, "Just reboot the servers." The CTO, gray-faced and sweating through his dress shirt, stammered, "It's not the servers, the licensing chain. Everything's rejecting internal credentials. Even I got bounced from the root node." "Then override it," Sierra barked. "I can't. The contract says non-transferable rights. There's a fallback protocol. It points to an external license host. We've been cut off." Sierra blinked. "By who?" "By the person who wrote it." "Miranda? This whole system runs on her architecture. Her LLC owns the license. And per the clause you signed, no," Sierra snapped, pointing a shaky finger. "No, no, no. You're not pinning this on me. Ma'am, this is not about blame. It's about the fact that payroll is dead, we're non-compliant on 6 audits, and our client portals are legally required to report downtime after 4 hours. We're already 2 hours in." Sierra turned to the room like a preacher mid-sermon. "Okay, everyone just breathe. This is clearly an overreaction. It's probably a glitch. We'll reboot, we'll reset. Maybe someone accidentally disconnected a pipeline." From across the room, someone muttered, "Yeah, 2 years ago." The CTO pulled up a live dashboard. "Here. Every handshake protocol is trying to ping this address." He pointed to the string on screen. "That's not one of ours." Sierra squinted. "Who the hell is North Hollow Systems LLC?" Silence. And then a low, incredulous voice from a corner cubicle said, "I think that's Miranda's company." HR dropped their coffee. In her kitchen, Miranda smiled behind her mug. She refreshed the log feed. Someone in procurement was trying to backdoor through an old dev tunnel. It auto-locked and sent a denial notice. A second later, a licensing report hit her inbox. 98 attempts. All failed. At 8:12 a.m., a senior partner called the CTO directly. His voice was dry. "We just lost 3 regulatory deadlines and a $250,000 renewal. What the hell is going on?" The CTO replied the only way he could: "Our infrastructure is revoked, and we can't fix it without violating a contract Sierra signed." Meanwhile, Sierra was pacing like a coked-up parrot, mumbling, "It's just a system hiccup." Miranda was a sysadmin, not a nuclear warhead, but the engineers knew better. Miranda hadn't built a system. She'd built leverage, and the company had just yanked the wrong wire. Across town, Miranda opened an email draft. Subject: license transfer requisition terms. To Executive Board CC Legal. Attachments: contract clause 9.4 log exports current downtime fines. She typed 2 words in the body, per clause, then she clicked send. And took another sip of coffee. At 9:06 a.m., the CTO stormed into Legal's glass-walled fishbowl like a man walking into traffic. He didn't knock, just dropped a thumb drive on the paralegal's desk and said, "Find me the contract." The merger one, and the one Miranda signed. The paralegal blinked. "We have like 17 versions of that. Start with the one with Sierra's signature." She was the signatory for ops compliance, right? A beat of silence. Then, oh God, down the hall. Sierra was still flailing. She'd cycled through all 5 stages of corporate grief in under 20 minutes and was now stuck on a bastardized 6th, branding the outage. She wanted to call it a resilience opportunity. The The social media team was being told to prepare a post about unexpected maintenance during a legacy system pivot. HR had quietly locked the internal wiki. IT had pulled their own emergency protocols and found them pointing to dead nodes and Miranda's LLC endpoint. The error logs were damning. Every failed call, every handshake rejection, every license error, all of it traced back to Miranda's codebase. Not inspired by, not built over, hers. The CTO paced outside legal like a man waiting on biopsy results. Sweat soaked his collar. He scrolled through the logs again, praying for a backdoor. There was none. The fallback scripts Miranda had written were airtight. They didn't just lock people out, they reported violations. To her. Inside the conference room, 2 lawyers and 1 compliance officer had gathered around a clause that was rapidly becoming the legal equivalent of a nuke. It was buried deep in Miranda's contract, folded in like an origami middle finger. In the event of involuntary termination without cause, all proprietary licensing rights and active software dependencies shall revert to the signatory's holding entity, hereafter referred to as North Hollow Systems LLC. There it was, clear as glass, signed, dated, digitally initialed, by Sierra. The legal associate audibly gulped. She gave it away. She signed it away. The compliance officer pulled off his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. She didn't give it away. She had no idea what she was signing. The CTO slumped into a chair. When we did the merger, Miranda asked to restructure the base licensing terms. Said she wanted indemnity protection in case of acquisition. Nobody cared. We just wanted her to rebuild the dam system, which she did, said the lawyer, under her architecture, her tools, her proprietary stack. The second lawyer added quietly, which makes this more than an outage. This is breach territory, compliance failure, possibly licensing fraud if we try to override it. The room froze, because overriding it is exactly what Sierra had been screaming about for the last 30 minutes. Just then, the door burst open and Sierra barreled in, holding her phone like it was a gun. We just lost the Cascade Healthcare contract. The dashboard crashed mid-demo. That's a 7-figure account. What the hell is taking you so long? The CTO didn't even look at her. He just held up the contract. This is what's taking so long. She blinked at it. What is that? Your signature. On a clause that gave Miranda's LLC full license ownership the moment you fired her without cause? That's not real. That wasn't, she was just a back-end dev. She wasn't just anything, he snapped. She was the architect. Everything runs on her stack and now it's legally revoked. The lead counsel finally spoke. Her voice was slow, even. You can't undo this. You can't claw it back. If you override that code or access those servers, you violate licensing law. And if she pursues damages, Sierra's mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time all morning, she looked small. How much? Daily operational loss? So far north of 7 figures. Legal exposure, the lawyer shrugged. Depends how mad she is. She's not mad, Sierra insisted. She's weird. She barely talks. She wore sneakers to board meetings. Yeah, the CTO said, because she was too busy building the infrastructure you just unplugged. The phone in Sierra's hand slipped slightly. She looked down, saw her own signature at the bottom of the clause. Looped letters, hard over the I. The lawyer tapped the paper. Congratulations, she said. You signed the kill switch. Across town, Miranda opened her inbox. Subject, urgent reinstatement and licensing discussion. From board at company name com. Time, 10:01 a.m. She didn't open it. Instead, she refreshed the logs again. 152 license pings in the last hour. All failed, all routed through her system. The system she warned them not to ignore. She took another bite of toast. Not warm, not even good. But better than whatever panic Sierra was chewing on right now, and way easier to swallow. At exactly 10:43 a.m., a Gulfstream G550 touched down at the private airstrip north of the city. On board were Alton Merrick and Patrice Donnelly, majority owners, board founders, and the sort of wealthy that wears linen year-round. They'd just spent 12 days on a Mediterranean cruise called the Serenity Circuit, where phones were banned, and conflict resolution came in the form of guided sound baths and champagne yoga. By 11:12 a.m., both had been briefed. By 11:15, Alton threw a tablet across the boardroom and screamed, $4.3 million. Patrice didn't scream. She didn't speak at all. Just stared out the window like she could still see the coast of Sardinia and imagine a world where her inbox wasn't stacked with red-flagged compliance violations, breach notices, and a politely lethal memo from their largest client's legal team asking why their audit pipeline showed no valid signature detected. Sierra stood at the head of the table in a beige pantsuit that looked like it came with a podcast. Her hair was still photo-ready, but her voice cracked every third syllable. It's okay, listen, it's not that bad. It's mostly just like glitches, and we're working on it. It's got eyes on it, and legals pulled up the old contracts, and honestly, Miranda left us kind of a mess. Stop saying her name like she's Voldemort, Patrice snapped. Sierra blinked. Excuse me. Keep acting like she summoned this from hell. She built our entire infrastructure. You kicked her out with a goddamn succulent and a Canva quote about growth. Alton turned to legal, who looked more exhausted than usual. Is this reversible? No, said the counsel flatly. She didn't just build the architecture. She built it under a license owned by her LLC. Clause 9.4 states that if she was terminated without cause, control reverts to her. She owns the whole code base, the entire license chain, and per federal licensing law, we can't override it without permission. Alton narrowed his eyes. So what you're saying is we're trespassing on our own system? Yes, said the CTO from the corner. With every access attempt, we're breaching contract. If she wanted to, she could take us to federal court and bleed us dry on statutory penalties alone. Sierra stepped forward. That's ridiculous. It's just software. Beatrice turned slowly, voice like cold steel. And your signature is on the clause that handed her the detonator. I didn't know what I was signing. Because you didn't read it, Alton growled. You were too busy building your goddamn brand. Silence fell like a body on a hardwood floor. Sierra looked around the room, at the lawyers who wouldn't meet her eyes, the CTO who'd stopped trying to defend her, the interns from comms who looked like they wanted to melt into the carpet. Her glossed lips twitched once, twice. The corners of her mouth started to tremble. I was trying to modernize, she said, voice strangled. She was obsolete. Everyone said she was cold, difficult, quiet. Not collaborative, she was efficient, Patris snapped. You're the one who needed a ring light to send a memo. Legal slid the contract across the table. There, that's the clause, initialed, digitally time-stamped. Unbreakable, you gave her the kingdom, and then you burned the bridge to ask for it back. Sierra grabbed the paper, staring at her own swirling initials. She didn't speak for a full 30 seconds, just stood there frozen, the walls closing in behind her fake credentials and borrowed authority. Alton pulled his chair back and stood. Get her on the phone, Miranda. Now. She's not answering, the CTO said. She got our email, our calls, nothing. She won't even negotiate. Hasn't said a single word since Friday, legal said, but she's watching. The license logs show that she monitors every ping, every failed handshake. Every time we try to fix something, she sees it. Silently, Sierra's breath hitched. So we're just hostages? No, Patris said, picking up her purse. We're just dumb. And she's patient enough to let us feel every inch of it. Down the street, Miranda sat on a park bench feeding bits of stale baguette to pigeons. Her phone buzzed. She didn't check it, didn't need to. The company would talk, they'd bluster, they'd scream, but they wouldn't touch her system because they couldn't, and that kind of silence was better than applause. By 1:23 p.m., Sierra's corporate keycard stopped working. She tried it once on the elevator, light flashed red. Tried again at the second-floor server room, red again. When she jabbed it at the HR suite door and nothing happened, she turned to the intern trailing her and hissed, "Do you know who I am?" The poor kid blinked. "I thought you were still in charge." Sierra spun and marched toward the glass cube where legal, IT, and the board were now locked in conference. She slammed her hand against the glass. Inside, no one moved. The CTO simply turned a laptop screen slightly toward her, just enough to show the access log. User, Esterner access suspended reason, security protocol escalation under clause 9.4, it was official. She'd been cut off, all credentials revoked, she banged harder. The CEO finally opened the door, face pale and drawn. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. "We're not doing anything," he said flatly. "You already did." Across the building, HR scrambled to clean up, but it was too late. Their internal docs were gone. Every policy draft, every onboarding form, every file Sierra had streamlined into the cloud for efficiency, all vanished, not deleted, just redirected to Miranda's archive, not a hack, not even sabotage. She'd built the storage paths, the dependencies, the efficiency. Sierra had signed off on everyone. The company's spine was Miranda's skeleton, and now it had walked away. At 2:12 p.m., Alton placed the call. Miranda answered on the third ring. Calm, polite, no background noise, just the soft hum of a fan and distant birdsong. "Miranda," he said, "we'd like to come to an agreement." She paused for a moment, then said, "All terms are detailed in the license reacquisition schedule. Section 11. Subsections A through D." Patris, listening in, spoke next. "We understand, but this is personal now. We'd like to know what you want." Another pause, then Miranda replied, "Cool as dry ice, what I want is irrelevant. The license is a living agreement. If you wish to resume operations, the schedule outlines reactivation timelines and penalties. And if we don't comply, you're already in breach. I'm simply observing now." She hung up, not abruptly, not dramatically, just professionally. Inside the boardroom, no one spoke for a solid minute. Then Alton turned to legal. "How bad is it? Short term? Millions. Long term?" The lawyer shrugged. "Depends how long she enjoys watching us sweat." Patris stood. "Cut Sierra loose, you mean? She's radioactive. Every client call since this morning has asked for her removal. The optics are tanking." In the hallway, Sierra was still trying to regain control, whispering threats, crying, then not crying, calling people babes and sweeties who hadn't spoken to her in months. At 2:57 p.m., security arrived. Two plainclothes guys with soft shoes and bored eyes. They asked her to collect her belongings. She screamed that she was HR. One of them held up a tablet with the updated org chart. She wasn't. Her branded succulent had already been thrown in the breakroom trash. At 3:09 p.m., she was escorted through the lobby. Nobody clapped. Nobody filmed. Most people just looked away. The era of curated vibes and ambient toxicity was over. Across town, Miranda updated her billing dashboard. added a late penalty to the license reactivation column. Then she clicked over to her inbox and archived every message marked urgent. One of them had the subject line "We're open to any number." She smiled. They'd always been open, just never to the right terms. The boardroom was packed to capacity, but no one was talking. Phones were silenced. Coffee cups untouched. Even the air felt like it didn't want to make a sound. Sierra sat at the far end of the table, arms folded tightly, chin high like she was still running a seminar on executive embodiment. But her heels tapped a frantic rhythm under the table, betraying her calm. At the head of the table, Alton leaned forward. His usual tan was now ghost pale. Patris sat beside him, fingers laced, expression carved in stone. Across from them, legal had spread out copies of Contract Clause 9.4, color-coded and time-stamped, printed in triplicate just so no one could pretend it didn't exist anymore. No one had said a word for nearly 4 minutes. Then Alton finally exploded. "Do you even comprehend what you triggered?" His voice bounced off the glass walls, ricocheted through the silence like a bullet in a bank vault. Sierra flinched. "You don't need to yell at me." Alton slammed a fist on the table. "You fired the only person who understood our infrastructure. You gave away control of the entire company's nervous system like it was a scented candle from your stupid culture gift bags." "It was just a clause," she snapped, desperate. "No one told me it would do all this." "I thought she was bluffing. Who reads that far into legalese?" "You're not supposed to bluff with contracts," Patris said coldly. "You're supposed to understand them." Sierra tried to regain footing, fumbling for that fake confidence tone. "Okay, but we can still fix this. We just need to make her an offer. A good one. Maybe a steak or back pay," or Patris didn't let her finish. She stood, picked up a branded succulent from the table, one of the exact kind Sierra used to hand out like plastic metaphors, and hurled it across the room. It hit the far wall with a wet thunk, dirt splattering the whiteboard and dripping down the quarterly revenue projections like rot. The silence afterward was even heavier than before. "This," Tris said through clenched teeth, "wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a mood, it wasn't a vibe misalignment. This was strategic, legal, brutal, and justified." Sierra's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her brand language had run out of runway. Alton turned to legal. "What are our options? We're in negotiation purgatory. Miranda hasn't violated anything. She's responding through formal channels. She's within her rights to sit on this as long as she likes. She's not biting at any of our offers." "Why not?" The council shrugged. "Some people don't want the money, they want the memory." Across the country, in a sleek office that faced the Potomac River, Miranda signed a contract with a federal agency tasked with digital compliance for infrastructure projects. Same architecture, same stack, new clients, higher stakes. Her desk was quiet, minimal. The only decoration, the succulent from her old desk, now fully bloomed. She looked at it for a long moment, then turned to her new team, a trio of clean-cut engineers who didn't wear hoodies to meetings or speak in hashtags. "I'm uploading the seed code today," she said. "Same system, stronger perimeter, smarter locks." One of them nodded, and ownership retained. Permanently. "And this time," she said, clicking her pen shut, "we don't water it with bullshit." Back in the boardroom, Sierra stood in the silence she created, surrounded by the wreckage of her own incompetence. The company was bleeding cash, hemorrhaging credibility, and hemorrhaging her. She looked around, begging for a lifeline, but there were none. Just a chair she no longer deserved, a brand she no longer controlled, and the echo of a woman she once called legacy clutter turning out to be the foundation under everything. Miranda never raised her voice. She didn't need to. She wrote the final word in the silence they gave her, and it echoed. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit him.